So we are in Brussels, in Botanique. There will be an exhibition here very soon, but we come back later because first I want to talk about the artist's life in general.
Okay.
Because you are originally from Paris, but you lived in many places. I always had experience in Berlin and in Paris, in other countries, London. And Brussels was always an interesting place because that was relatively affordable for artists, and also there was a big artist community. There are many small places, not just galleries, but artisan spaces. Comparing to Paris, what do you think? Paris is getting too expensive. Is it a better place to live?
To be honest with you, I think the city changed a lot. I mean, I live now since more than 15 years in Brussels. And of course, for a moment, I mean, like 15 years ago, it was the place to be in Brussels because it was quite cheap to have a studio and to be able to come. And of course, the main thing with Brussels, and that is a perfect city because it's a central of Europe and it's so easy to travel. I mean, you can come from Paris by train, London, Amsterdam, and also Berlin. And of course, it's still a great place for that in terms of location. Of course, we know since this last year, the price increased a bit for the studio and for all of that. But in the meantime, you still have some great schools, also with the La Cambre, Lergue, and Laca, and also in Antwerp and Ghent. And you have a lot of gallery. Of course, we know the situation for the moment is quite complex because you have a lot of gallery who closed recently. But in the meantime, you still have some renew. I mean, because with the student or I mean, after school, a lot of people start to rent artist-run space and also off space, artisan space, like you want. But it's still going on, and that is also quite simple because like it's also a small city. It's very easy to bring people all together, and it's also for that what I love this city.
In Paris, I guess we have to make a more precise because Paris is just a very big city. I mean, there's more than 10 million inhabitants. So you have, of course, you have the area of the Pompidou, for example, Le Marais, but you also have the outskirts, Saint-Denis or Nanterre, a lot of space.
I'm still going quite often in Paris, and it's also a quite complex city because I mean, it's much more bigger. And also, if you want to rent a space, it's also more expensive. It's for that now you have more and more things happen around Paris, like they say now the Grand Paris. And sometimes you can find some studio artists or also residency out of Paris. And that is also something quite interesting. And also a lot of pop-up events, but in terms of the way it's more easier to do that in Brussels than Paris because it's still always the same thing about the rent, but there still happens something, and the connection between Paris and Brussels is very close because it's just 1 hour 20 by train, and you can still, I mean, to be in Paris just for the day for one show. But and the city also changed a lot this last year because now, since Art Basel, the main art fair is back now in Paris in the Grand Palais. You have now more and more main gallery like David Zwirner and White Cube or Gagoshen. Now all of them, they have also space in Paris, and you have two different kind of way. Of course, all we have not anymore, unfortunately, and less the medium gallery, I will say. But in terms of huge gallery and mega gallery, they are still there. And in the meantime, you have more and more, I mean, small projects.
Yeah, I think this is because of the London and Brexit stuff. A lot of galleries moved from London to Paris.
I work in the art world since now 20 years. And for a long time, you have a lot of artists based in Paris. All of them, they moved first in Berlin. And after that, when the price of rent start to increase, a lot of them start to move in Brussels. And now you have also some artists who move from Brussels to, for example, south of France or also Italy, or they go in the hometown when they grow up. And that is something also quite new. And it was not the case before. And but I'm convinced they will still have, a comeback and just a cycle.
You may see that, okay, there are many good galleries in Brussels and a lot of artisan spaces. On the other hand, for example, with the opening of the canal, it also brings some questions to the table. Is it too big, too French dominated, or things like that?
Like I say always, if you want to organize a show or an event, you don't care where you are. I say always do it. I mean, now you have the social media, you can do some photo, and it's not the most important. It's just to be there and do something. Because I remember when I opened my first gallery, we have so many galleries, like 5 or 6 galleries, we were able to apply to do, for example, Lister Art Fair. And now, today, in Lister Art Fair, you have only 1 gallery from Brussels who will apply. And for Go-Visitor, it would be quite easy for them to be in, because there is no other gallery, or that is something quite new. And I say always, the best period when we know this is time is for the moment quite complex for everybody, and not only in the art world. I say always in this time or period is the best way and the best time to start something. I mean, if you remember in the 19, all of those galleries open in Paris, in the area near to the Bibliothèque François Mitterrand. There you have Almine Reich, Emmanuel Perrotin, Air de Paris, and all of those galleries, they open this quite weird timing. And I say always, it's the best timing to start something new.
Actually, you opened a gallery called Ricou Gallery in 2009. You was only 25 at this time, and if I remember myself, in 25 I wanted to go to, I don't know, to the beach or just go to the disco with some girlfriends. But so when did you really started to think about galleries?
I go in museum and galleries since I'm 15. And I start to work for different galleries like 1900 in Paris, also Emmanuel Perrotin, like I did some training. And after that, I moved to Brussels. It was supposed to be there just for 3 months to work for Almine Reich. And at the end of this training of 3 months, it was the crisis of subprime. And at this time, I said, okay, this is a crisis. Maybe this is the best time to open a gallery. And I opened the gallery with almost nothing, and I just, okay, let's do it, you know. I mean, because I applied for work for other gallery, and I said, okay, why to do my own gallery? And I opened the first gallery when I was 25. I was the youngest gallerist in Brussels. And I did that without anything behind that. It was just the idea to do it because I love organized exhibition. And I say, why not, you know? Why I should wait like 10 years or 20 years. I say, okay, let's go now, and faster is it, better is it. I mean, just it's quite simple. I found the space. I say it's maybe the good timing. And of course, you can have some regrets and say, oh, why I didn't do that like that or like that, but who cares, you know, just that is the most important, you just do it, like I say always.
I always wondering how you select artists, because if I do that, of course I have some thoughts about that. Maybe I have some friends even. I want to include anyway because we are friends and things like that, which is not really professional. But actually I wanted to ask, what is your method?
It's always about feeling, you know. For example, I know you have some galleries, they will analyze all the market, the business, this artist in this gallery, he did this show at this time, he did that. But like I say always, I don't know how I can explain, but it's always about feeling, you know. I will see a friend of mine who will tell me, okay, have a look on that, and I try to be always open-minded. I mean, to be honest with you, I try to visit the maximum of exhibition I can. And also sometimes it's a bit weird, but I've also artists who contact me in the past, and they say, oh, maybe we should or we could to do something together. And it's always like that, you know. I think there is no rules, because if there is rules, there is too much strategy, and it must be authentic, you know. I'm a bit a dreamer, but in a way I think it's also nice sometimes to just think about your intuitions, and also just to be aware. But of course, for that you think something happened like that, but behind that there is a lot of work, there is a lot of travel, and also I'm always curious when I see something new, okay, always to go deeper to check if there is a website, or if there is an Instagram, or maybe if I can organize a studio visit. And sometimes that can take a long time. Maybe there is some artists, I know them since 10 years and I never did something with them, and one day I say, okay, it's now, let's go for it.
What do we see here in Botanique? You will have a new exhibition called Side by Side, with 10 artists?
For the first time, something like soon 2 years ago, Tanya, who worked before at La Centrale like main curators, she invited me to curate a show and to co-curate a show. That is quite important because I'm not alone in this project. And this idea, it was to have 10 laureates of artists who won some prize. And for me it was something new because since now I always select the artists. And for the first time of my life, she come to me and say, okay, I know you work a lot with young artists, with artists who didn't have any exhibition before, and I think you are the right person to do that. And for me it was quite an interesting exercise because of course it's 10 artists, but the idea is to don't do a group show, to don't have also like we do a graduate show, but it's to find the best way how to combine 10 artists together. And also a horrible story behind that, it's why we are there today in the Botanique, in this beautiful space, is because unfortunately the mayor of Brussels decided to close La Centrale, another space for young and emerging artists. And unfortunately this show was almost gone. I mean, it was a last minute solution we get with the help of Grégory Thirion, the main curator here, and he invited us with Badia to continue this show. And it's quite great for us to be able to do it.
I'm thinking about this 10 artists that there might be, or it's almost inevitable that you have to deal with them individually, because one could be very shy, or one could be thinking of a very big project which could not be work here.
You have also to understand the mindset of the artist, and I try always to never say no. I try always to say yes, because if you start to a new project with an artist who never did something before, like in this kind of institution or exhibition, it's always nice and it's important for me to be behind them and to support them. Of course, I will never say no, we don't will bring this work, but I will just say, okay, imagine you to have this work like that, and I always think about the audience, about people who will come in the exhibition, because I say, okay, you come with the artist in the studio and you just look around and say, okay, let's try to find the best way, and we can always, until the last minute, move something, change that. And of course, because when I started my first gallery, I was only 25 and I was always the youngest, and sometimes I have some artists older than me. And now it starts to be a bit the opposite, but in the same way, it's not about age, it's more about experience and what you want to get from the artist. And that, I think, in my position of curators, it is quite important to be behind them and to help them. I don't care to be in front of them. I must be always behind them and to always help them to show what they want, and to also think about how you can combine all together in a space. And also for this kind of exercise, it's not a solo show, and it's also a different way how to think about that.
And about spaces, because if you can do a show anywhere in Brussels, okay, let's see that in Brussels, what would be your choice? I mean, that of course I did not told you that, okay, how many artists?
I say in terms of place, I remember it was quite funny, but after I closed my gallery, I opened a space called Attic. And in this space, it was the Attic, and it was in a huge building in Rue de la Régence with 10 other big galleries like Jan Mott, Micheline Schwarzer, Sorry We Are Closed. And I was the guys in the Attic, And I remember I applied for a magazine for the show, and they say, oh, but it's not a white cube, And I say, why we need a white cube? I mean, like I say always, if you want to do a show, you can do that in your bathroom, and you don't care, and you will just invite people there. And of course, it's always exciting to have a huge museum and a huge team behind you, but for me, it doesn't matter the number of people or the money you have behind. It's just what you show, There is so many huge shows I saw in some gallery in Brussels, and at the end I said, okay, it's not my, it's not work, it's not also in terms of size, number. It's better sometimes to have just only one work than 20 doesn't work. It's for that, I think it's always also a challenge for us when you're a curator and when you have to do a show, to be flexible. And I will say in Brussels, all the area, all the space, there is always something interesting, you know.
Why I ask this? Because you made a show in a smoke room near the Port de Halle, in a very, very, very small place.
It started a long time ago with a friend of mine, Tim Wouters, who is also a gallerist. After all the exhibition, they organized a party in this bar, Le New Touquet. And after a few months, he decided to organize exhibition in the smoking room. Last year in Belgium, they decided to stop the smoking room, also to be able to smoke in terrace. And I say, oh, but this tiny space, very weird. I mean, everybody come here and also to see exhibition, but why don't do this trick to continue to do some exhibition in this smoking room until the end of the possibility to do that. That will be the end of the years in December. And I said, okay, I will try to curate a show. I will just running a show almost every month, every 2 months, with no pressure. Of course, I don't spend so much money, but just the idea is to invite artists. Okay, let's go. And are you okay? I have some artists, they come to me. Also, I select some, like the last show with Charlotte Baudry. I remember a series of shows with cigarette, and we decided with Ralph Schutters, the first show we did, okay, let's paint the wall with the color of the cigarette, and we keep it this installation now forever. It's the installation of Ralph, and now each artist come in the space and put it artwork on that. And now it will be tricky because I don't have so many slots until the end of the years, but that would be the end of the story. And sometimes it's also good to think when you do a show or when you think about something, also think about the end, you know. It's me who will decide the end of the exhibition or this series of exhibition. Maybe I will find a new space soon somewhere, and that is also the game. And of course, on this kind of show, there is no, I mean, if we can, we will maybe sell a work, but it's not the idea before that, it's just to do it, you know. And it's quite important today, and that is, I try to do my best for that, is to invite people and to say, okay, we are always behind the smartphone, on Instagram and that, but I always think it's quite also important to organize, people come, we do an opening, we do a show, and that is something I try to keep it that, and for me it's very important, you know. It's, if tomorrow you propose me to curate just show on web or selection, it doesn't make sense for me, you know.
Of course, it's always better to meet in person. And anyway, that reminds me that sometimes there is a big feeling about art, that art could be very, very intimate with some invited people and things like that, or could be in an opposite, let's say a mega show like in big white cubes or big galleries, or even in the Tate Modern or somewhere, something like that. And sometimes there's not much in between.
It's for that, like I say, always the in-between is very important, because we see more and more since those last years a huge gap between the small exhibition with low budget and mega huge show. And that is something happening in Brussels, because like we're a small city, you have some time, you can see some art dealer, galleries mix up all together, it still exists. And for example, at Galerie Gaillard a few months ago, they invite also young artists in the gallery to do a show in the gallery. And in this city, it's always possible to do that. But in the main huge city, unfortunately, we lost this in-between, like you say. And of course, in terms of curation, at the end, it's the same exercise, you know. It's just in terms of size.
I think we already discussed a little that theme, but now you know, because of the technical development and AI and SpaceX and Man on the Mars and things like that, I mean, rich people soon want to upload their mind into the cloud and live forever like this, in this way. If you have the possibility, would you sign up for this?
You can sign up with everything. I mean, we don't have to be afraid about technology. And about that, because we know we have some artists who already start to work with AI, and also it's quite important that the artists now start to work with that. I mean, I don't like people who say, no, we don't will go in this way or not. I mean, we have to take the adventure in all the different possibilities. And of course, if you propose me a project about that, because you can also work with that, but also you can also critique. We don't have to think that will be the evil or something bad to do. And like I say always, when there is something new, everybody starts, and at the end, always the base will be in the history, you know. It's the same when you have a new movement in the art. All of them, they will start to do remember a few years ago it was the zombie painting and all those painters, but at the end, on 100 artists, only 2 or 3 will be in the history book.
Yeah, that's always a big question, of course.
Yeah.
Who will be there? Well, thank you very much for the discussion.
You're welcome.